Hello, Internet! Welcome to episode 169 of the Assorted Calibers Podcast, the second-minute podcast that has a little bit for everyone. I'm Weer'd, and with me, as always, is the light in the east, the North Star, fireflies. I don't know. There's lights that are pretty. Aaron Paulette! How you doing, Aaron?
You got very, very close to calling me Lucifer. And the thing is, if you had, I wouldn't have known if it were intentional or not. Probably not, knowing you. But then that would be like, just call me Lucifer.
He wasn't always bad. He was still an archangel. That's pretty kick butt.
It has been a roller coaster of a weekend. Saturday, I somehow managed to, without even trying, just hit peak zen, whereby my brain just sort of blissfully shut off. And I don't mean I did nothing, but I wasn't overthinking. I wasn't anxious. It wasn't going, a million miles an hour in one direction. It was just sort of it was just purring happily and neutral. While at the same time, my body was being very productive and, oh, yes, and I want to do this and I want to do that. And I got a whole bunch of cleaning and organizing done. And, I got work done in Dad's room, and I got my, I went through my bug out bag because I do it like every 6 months, and the time change is my cue, and that's coming up. And I did all that. I got all that great organization done, and I wasn't bored because my brain was just at that, everything is cool, everything is fine, and I was just sort of happy being productive, not needing to be entertained. That was great. Just got so much done. It was awesome. And then Sunday, and I don't even know what changed, but Sunday ended with me screaming at inanimate objects that if they hurt me once more time, I was going to kill them. And not only would I kill them, it would hurt the entire time I was killing them.
I'd like to see how you'd come good on these promises.
There was both an axe and a shotgun nearby. I was fully prepared to enforce these edicts. And what's amusing is that after I made my proclamation, nothing hurt me again. Now, admittedly, I rather quickly packed things up and went to bed because I was exhausted. Mm-hmm. But I like to think that they got the message.
I mean, clearly they did.
So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of an interesting 180 from, I'm happily productive and no minding and all these other things, and then, screaming at furniture. So that was my weekend.
But by chance, did you push things a little bit too far? That is a thing that'll happen with my wife. Is she will get big ideas, big plans, and get very productive, and not really think about what that entails to her. And she will get herself too tired, too stressed out. She won't be drinking water, or she'll overheat or something like that. And then she will go from that peak zen point of the, oh my gosh, look at all that I'm doing. Look what's happening. Look what's happening, to just misery.
That's possible. And I think it was a contributing factor, but I think what happened was more like I pushed myself for too long. Mm-hmm. And I, much like a child, got cranky.
Yes.
And it was like, no, I should have gone to bed hours ago.
Because that was definitely me yesterday, and a little bit today. Is my wife has been, she's gotten in a cooking mood. I'm the person who does most of the cooking in the house, but there's some stuff that she makes that she likes, and she was running low on some supplies that she brings as like snacks for work and all that. I mean, she's got a super demanding job, so she likes to work in various meal replacements and things like that if she has to like work through lunch or stay late. And all that. And so she was just like baking up these like, energy bars and energy bites and those sort of things, and little like, breakfast kits that she could just pack up and like, add this like oatmeal stuff and add a boiling water to it. And ta-da, you have breakfast at your desk first thing in the morning. and all that. And I just kept telling her, just make sure you're listening, make sure you're drinking plenty of water, make sure you're taking care of yourself. And that was definitely like the other day is like, yeah, she got going and she had the oven going and all of that. And suddenly the kitchen just was getting really hot. And she didn't realize that it was getting very hot until she was vastly overheated. And then she was a mess. So I can understand, especially when you get in that productive zen on you can definitely get lost.
And go ahead. But I do understand what you mean about forgetting to drink, because there was one point where I got dehydrated and it's just, I'm thirsty, I'm going to drink. And I got one of those, oh geez, I don't remember the size, but like, the sports bottle size of Gatorade as opposed to like the big ass gallon size.
Mm-hmm.
I had one of those and it was just like, I just drained this thing in pretty much one continual swallow.
Mm-hmm.
I was thirsty. I've finally figured out the best way to drink large quantities of water, and I'm sure that this is going to come as a surprise to no one, but I had never been taught this, and I just sort of figured it out, and it works really, really well for me. And Weer'd, you can tell me if this is something you've always known or not. But if I either am like super duper thirsty, or if I have to drink something I don't want to, like I hate the taste of water. It's just, I don't know, I guess it's the very city chemicals or whatever. Although, to be honest, bottled water and other things also don't do it for me.
Though you do live in Florida, I will say right now, I still remember to this day, I think I was 7 years old, and we were staying at a hotel, like a motel room in Kissimmee, Florida. We, of course, being Yankees, we called it Kissimmee. And so we were in Kissimmee, Florida, and I got up in the middle of the night and the air conditioner was going in the room. And we didn't have air conditioning at our house at home. And so just like that dry air conditioning air and just the hot summer day and all that. And I just was parched. And I went into the bathroom and I grabbed the little cup. And I still remember it was one of those individually wrapped plastic cups with a little diamond pattern embossed on the cups. And I filled it up from the tap in the bathroom, and I took a drink and I almost died. It was just, oh my God.
Tasted a lot like sulfur, I'm guessing.
I don't even think my body could figure out what the hell it was supposed to taste like, because it was dry, middle of the night mouth and all that. But it was just that hard limestone water that you get in Florida. And I will have you know, if you look it up, the Poland spring water actually got a class action lawsuit against it because they were filtering and filling up the bottles with municipal water supply. And that is the same water that I grew up in. And like literally, I actually remember I dated a girl in New Jersey, and New Jersey also has terrible tasting water. And at least this part of Jersey did. And like they had a bubbler in the middle of their kitchen. And I just,
bubbler.
Yeah, exactly. And it was Poland spring water. And I remember filling up for that. And I'm like, this stuff comes out of the tap at home. So yeah.
I once dated a girl from Rhode Island, and she insisted it was a bubbler.
Yes.
So anyway, as I was saying before I was interrupted, here's the trick for drinking a lot of fluid very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this would work with beer or not. Gentlemen, you are free to experiment. So this works best with wide bottle things. Like if you are suckling from a regular soda bottle, it's not going to work real well. But like if you've got a glass, that works great. So what I do is I pull the corners of my mouth back. Basically, I smile. It's an open tooth smile.
Mm-hmm.
So I get those corners really wide. Then I get the mouth of the glass just as far into those pockets as I can.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, my overbite, not that I have, but my front teeth are like biting. Well, they're not actually biting the glass, but you get the idea. And then what I do is I just toss that thing back and I just swallow, and it allows a lot into the mouth all at once. And so, that's how I can drain one of those Gatorade things. which is kind of small, but still I can manage to do that in about 3 or 4 gulps when I'm really thirsty. So that's my technique. I'm sure, I just taught, everyone's grandmother how to suck eggs. They all know how to do this, but still, no one showed me and I figured it out. And damn it, I'm proud of that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I will say...
That's awesome. Oh my God, Weer'd. That is either... You're either being patronizing or condescending or something.
I think if there is a technique difference in there, I might not be catching the exact subtleties of it. It's one of those, the wider mouth. I was just going to point out that if you were drinking something out of a narrow mouth, the way to shotgun a 40 ounce of beer, and specifically a narrow-mouthed 40 ounce of beer. And of course, this is going to work considerably better with a non-carbonated, non-alcoholic beverage, is you take a drinking straw and put the drinking straw in the bottle as if you are going to try to drink out of the bottle with the drinking straw. And then you put your mouth around the bottle, but not the drinking straw, and leave the drinking straw hanging out. And that creates an air return. And then
Makes
when
sense.
Up in the bottle, instead of it going ka-chunk, ka-chunk, ka-chunk into your mouth, it will just flow in quickly and smoothly.
Well, isn't that how people shotgun beers? They take the beer, they put it in their mouth, and then they, like, using a church key, they pop open the bottom.
Or you pop a hole in the side of it with a car key, and then put your mouth around it, and then pop the top. But same idea.
Okay.
And then it disappears very quickly.
Okay, then.
But that is great. My wife actually has. She tried it and it didn't work out well. But I found it to be quite exciting. Is she has these jugs that have essentially have. Yes.
I'm sorry. My apologies to Mrs. Beer.
Yes, Aaron. My wife is a female-bodied woman.
I didn't expect you to say that. It took me by surprise.
Well, there. If for the people that were also surprised by that are laughing with you, and the people that are the people that were not surprised by that but then heard your laughter, they are also now laughing with you.
Okay.
Everybody wins.
All right. So your wife has these jugs.
These water bottles, and they are large water bottles. Cloth stretching milkies. And see, now you've done it to me, Aaron Paulette. But they essentially kind of have like challenges on them. They're kind of like it's kind of like a challenge bottle where like it'll have like either times of the day or like encouraging sayings on it. And the idea being that you fill up this. She's got one that's like a full gallon and one that's a half gallon. And essentially the idea is you're just supposed to drink it throughout the day. And it's just one of those, like, you've got your goals, and it's one of those like, all right, this is your 7 p.m. This is your 5 p.m. goal. And this is, going through the day. And so, it is interesting, but yeah, my wife's got a weird battle with staying hydrated. Is she just, she doesn't like me saying this, but it's one of those, like, I don't think she experiences the sensation of thirst. She experiences like desperation of water, but nothing before then. And it could be because she has a very atypical brain, given that she has epilepsy and she had a pack of cigarette-sized chunk of her brain removed with minimal effect to her, except for it got rid of her epilepsy. So I don't know if that's related or not, but yeah, she's just constantly having to remind herself to drink water. And I'll just say that I personally have always enjoyed having a drink in my hand, whether it be the whiskey sour that I'm currently nursing right now in the evening, but it will be a cup of tea in the morning, a glass of water in the afternoon. I will just always have something going just as a means to keep hydrated, because dehydration sucks. It takes the wind out of your sails, and it gives me a thumping headache.
Well, see, I'm prone to headaches in general just because of all my allergies and all the weather patterns in Florida. Plus, after having enough kidney stones that I've literally lost count. At least I didn't do that Parks and Rec thing where I go literally. But yeah, I mean, I had over a dozen, and at this point, it's just, look, I am constantly drinking. Unless something very strange happens, I am constantly drinking on something, Gatorade, juice, milk, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pretty sure my headaches aren't from dehydration, but every so often, it's like, oh yeah, it's been a while. I should drink something. So Weer'd, I think we've fooled around long enough. We've probably bored half our listeners to death. Let's just jump ahead to the main topic, shall we?
Yes. So we will start out with, it's a little bit of bad news. This happened, I think, the day after we wrapped on the last podcast, but it looks like we talked about a couple weeks ago that North Carolina had sent a bill to the governor that would get rid of their Jim Crow era pistol purchase permit in the state of North Carolina. And unfortunately, we predicted it. We thought it looked pretty reasonable. I talked to Sean Sorrentino, was quite active in the activism side of getting this bill out there, and he's like, it's gonna get vetoed. And I kept checking back, and I knew that come September 1st, it was going to be law if the governor didn't veto it. And I'm like, geez, it's getting awfully close. And then he vetoed it. So, oh well. So that's.
I'm pretty sure I said he was going to veto it.
Oh yeah. You absolutely did. I was again the Pollyanna. I was hoping maybe just maybe the fact that this was a bill that was put into place by the Klan, that maybe just maybe it would go through in this racially charged era, but that is not the case. So I will say, first up, I'm going to say, you know what? Good job, North Carolina, though. It better to get a bill to the desk and get it vetoed than not have any bill at all. So good on you guys, and you're already that much closer to getting the next one going. Just keep the ball going. Take a page out of the anti-gun playbook. They're always pushing the law. Because one of these days it will pass. And so, I'm pulling for you guys, and hopefully the next time it'll go through. And furthermore, when this governor decides to try for higher political aspirations, here you've got something to hang around his neck to hinder him in his upward climb. So good on you guys, and don't let this discourage you. And I wanted to read this one line from the governor's statement. He said, gun permit laws reduce gun homicides and suicides and reduce the availability of guns for criminal activity. At a time of rising gun violence, we cannot afford to repeal a system that works to save lives. The legislature should focus on combating gun violence instead of making it easier for guns to end up in the wrong hands. And this is crap. Oh my God, I cannot believe that there wasn't smoke coming out from under his desk when he said that, because his pants were on fire. Is just gun permit laws reduce gun homicides and suicides. How would he know this? As far as I know, I think there was only 2 states that had this, and it was North Carolina and Missouri, and maybe a few others that got rid of it a long, long time ago. And it's just this it's not like they're talking about like constitutional carry, which you could argue, but not really. But this is literally just let's keep the black people and the poor people from having guns law. And there just aren't that many examples of it. So how would you know, how could you even base that on anything? It's just ridiculous. And the legislation should focus on combating gun violence. Well, how about letting the good people be armed? Because oddly enough, when you let that happen, the violent crime rate goes down. So, I mean, this is it's such a defeatable law that when the governor got it on his desk, he had to lie about it. So again, good on you, North Carolina.
I guess the odds of the veto getting overridden aren't that good.
No, because it passed right on party lines. It was like it was between like 2 and 4 votes in the majority. So it was a weak pass. That being said, Aaron, you mentioned the fact that when you predicted this, you mentioned that, you looked it up and saw that Governor Cooper is in fact a Democrat, and you said that doesn't bode well. And unfortunately, in the track record, of things, that's absolutely true. But again, I would hope that there is a good number of left-leaning and or card-carrying Democrat gun owners that are listening to this podcast, and you guys are the most valuable people in this fight, because you can contact the various Democrats that voted against sending this bill to the governor's desk and talk to them about how racist it is, how much it affects the poor disproportionately, and how much this does nothing to prevent violent crime. This is just Jim Crow garbage. And so, even though anti-gun Democrat does have a ring to it, just as far as party history goes, that doesn't need to be the case. And I think we're on a precipice of this changing. And so I hope that we can go forward next so that a bill like this doesn't go to a party line split like it did this time.
All very good points. And I have to agree with you on that, because as we saw starting in the summer of last year, more and more people are becoming gun owners. Gun ownership is being normalized. And I think the next time this comes up to vote, it will fail. Now, how much work they're going to have to do, how many years it will be before this comes up again, that I don't know. It may have to be another legislature, another session, maybe even another governor. But I do think that the writing is on the wall for the pistol purchase permit. And I do think that the next time it comes up, it's going to be gone. So if nothing else, I think this has shown that it is weak, and it can be defeated. It just needs a little bit more than last time.
Mm-hmm. I 100% agree.
So let's go to something we 100% don't agree about. Well, I mean, you and I agree, but so Weer'd. I understand that there was an attempted mass shooting in, I believe it was Syracuse, New York.
Yes.
And New York has really, really good gun laws. So I thought these things weren't supposed to happen.
Quote unquote good gun laws.
Yes, but I did say attempted mass shooting, and that's because a law-abiding citizen with a legally carried pistol and a permit to do so stopped the mass shooter. Mm-hmm. And then what happened?
So, yep. So the man stopped the mass shooting. Now, interestingly enough, it says at the end of the article that talks about this mass shooting that's in the show notes, the Syracuse Police Department is still investigating the shooting. The district attorney's office is aware the man who shot the killer, or the attempted killer, and other witnesses of the incident have received threats and have suffered property damage in what appears to be retaliation. So, first up, the friends of this jerk who was shot, and was he shot and killed? I believe.
Yes, he was.
Yes.
Yes, he was.
Yep. Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was shot and killed. Of course, he was shot and killed. I'm getting to the next part.
Exactly. It's like, dude, this is your segment.
But yes. So first up, friends of the departed attempted mass shooter are retaliating against the person who shot and killed him, as well as people who have who witnessed the shooting and were cooperating with police, and that is absolutely disgusting. I will also just take a brief moment to point out that this it demonstrates the catch-22 of the anti-gunners plight of the you'll never stop, a good guy with a gun will never stop a bad guy with a gun, because if someone attempts to do a mass shooting, in which case this guy was randomly firing into cars, but he didn't end up hitting anybody as far as I know. Same thing with the guy that was it Mississippi, who was shooting his AR into an apartment complex, and the guy sniped him with his rifle from across the way.
You're losing the thread, dude.
Yeah, I know. These instances, if the person doesn't end up killing 4 or more people, or even in the Mother Jones, Michael Bloomberg definition, wounding 4 or more people, it's not a mass shooting, and so therefore this man did not stop a mass shooting because there was no mass shooting to stop. And if there was the qualification that there was a mass shooting, he didn't really do that much because he didn't stop the mass shooting. It's a catch-22. There's no way to win.
It's such a devious Kafka trap that I have to admire it even as I hate it.
Mm-hmm. And then turn around and on this website, gunmemorial.org, I'm not going to give the person's name, but you can click on the link and there it is this 28-year-old person who was shot and killed, lost to gun violence on August 31st, 2021 in Syracuse, New York. They are being memorialized as someone lost to gun violence.
Well, as much as I hate to say it, they're not wrong. I mean, he was lost to gun violence. He was lost to gun violence he perpetrated because he brought it on himself, and it's utterly distasteful and it's disrespectful to actual victims, but that's the worst part. They're technically correct. Yeah, because if he hadn't instituted gun violence, he wouldn't have been a victim of gun violence. So he killed himself. Really is what it comes down to, is he killed himself. Someone else just carried the bullet for a while.
Yes. And this also shows the ghoulish nature of the anti-gun groups, that they will do anything to add a point on there. You see that with them using suicide numbers and conflating that with gun violence, and them taking this like super duper diluted definition of mass shooting and doing that to invoke people thinking about things like Sandy Hook or Columbine or Virginia Tech at all as horrible mass shooting events. And meanwhile, when 2 drug dealers shoot it out and a third person is and both of them get killed and a third person's wounded, that's suddenly a mass shooting. It's not even the same thing. And we had a similar incident with the CSGV. Did a thing called concealed carry killers, and the implication was that people that have concealed carry permits are walking time bombs. They're ticking time bombs. They're a problem. They're a law-abiding gun owner until they aren't, is the exact words that they were using.
Oh, I hate that phrase.
And they turned around and, Second Amendment supporter and editor of Bearing Arms, Bob Owens, unfortunately, for reasons that I never discovered and don't really care to find out, honestly, it's between him and his family. He ended up taking his own life, and he was a Second Amendment activist and had a concealed carry permit. And they listed Bob's death as a concealed carry killer because he had a concealed weapons permit and he took his own life. And that's not a ticking time bomb. This is a separate thing, but it's a point on their goal, and they're always looking to score points, and it's ghoulish and it's not right. And it's no good. So Aaron, you mentioned that New York has excellent gun laws, and we have they technically have none of the above, nor are their politicians all that good.
Right, you are, Weer'd. In fact, a while back, you asked David, who was a New York resident, both city and state, to compile a segment on one of the worst New York politicians, Andrew Cuomo. It's thorough, complete, hard-hitting, and riveting reporting.
Hi, and welcome to Gun Lovers and Other Strangers. A few months ago, Weer'd asked me to start putting together a segment on Governor Andrew Cuomo of New York in anticipation of him leaving office. He's a schmuck. Good riddance to bad rubbish. Ptooy! That about wraps up this segment. If you have any questions for me or suggestions for future segments or a comment on a past segment, please post them on the Assorted Calibers Podcast Facebook page and Aaron or Weer'd will make sure I get them. I'm also a contributor on the Blue Collar Prepping blog, which can be found at bluecollarprepping.blogspot.com. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. I am David, and this is Gun Lovers and Other Strangers.
Wait a second. Maybe can we have a little bit more details on the subject?
Well, what more do you need?
Like, there was... I felt like there was a whole lot more with Cuomo's career. I mean, how did he get there?
Well, fine. All right. If you need the nitty-gritty details, David has more.
Hi, and welcome to Gun Lovers and Other Strangers. In this segment, I'd like to talk about the fall of Andrew Cuomo, former three-term governor of New York. I've mentioned him in previous segments, and I'm going to revisit some of that information in addition to current events. As I'm sure our listeners have heard, on August 10th, Andrew Cuomo announced his resignation following an investigation by the New York Attorney General's office that confirmed allegations of sexual harassment. Prior to his resignation announcement, but following the AG's office conclusion, at least 4 county district attorneys had requested information in order to pursue criminal cases against Cuomo. Whether those cases will continue moving forward at this point, only time will tell. But all that is the present. First, we'll roll back the curtains of time and observe the patterns of corruption and bullying that led to the fall of Andrew Cuomo. Let's start with Cuomo's time at the Department of Housing and Urban Development. It was already a corruption-rife organization that reached new heights with Cuomo appointed as director under President Bill Clinton. This includes re-energizing the Bush-era Fees for Friends operation that could be a segment all its own. In fiscal year 1999, HUD lost track of $59 billion. That's billion with a B, as in, boy, that's a lot of money. Yet Director Cuomo did not order the HUD Inspector General to investigate the reason for the missing billions or try to get the money back. How was this man not thrown in jail at that time? Oh, right. Connections. When Andrew Cuomo ran for governor the first time in 2002, he demonstrated his character by insulting then-Governor George Pataki with a mean-spirited reference to the September 11th terrorist attacks. He said, "There was one leader for 9/11. It was Rudy Giuliani. If it defined George Pataki, it defined George Pataki as not being the leader. He stood behind the leader. He held the leader's coat. He was a great assistant to the leader, but he was not a leader." Mayor Giuliani defended Governor Pataki by saying that they were total partners and that Giuliani held Pataki's coat as often as Pataki held Giuliani's. Governor Pataki was stunned at Cuomo's comments and responded with, "There are things I can say, but I don't think it's appropriate." As I've mentioned before, when I still lived in New York, I was a trainer for several state agencies. One of those was the Attorney General's office. One series of trainings was for the AG's entire IT support staff. You know, the folks who ask if you tried turning it off and on again. During this training series, the Attorney General was Andrew Cuomo, and he was running for governor. In one class, I had a 20-plus year employee of the department tell me that in all his time, he had never seen morale as low as it was under the current AG. The entire class agreed with him, as did several following classes when they brought up the upcoming election. All of them swore they would never vote for him as governor or for any other office. Keep in mind that former Governor Eliot Spitzer, the man famously referred to as Client Number 9 during the investigation into his use of prostitutes, referred to Andrew Cuomo as the dirtiest politician he'd ever known. After Cuomo won his second attempt at governor in 2011, he declared, "I am the government," on a radio interview. Later, when Cuomo set up the Moreland Commission to investigate public corruption, he told reporters that the commission would be completely independent, stating, "Anything they want to look at, they can look at. Me, the lieutenant governor, the attorney general, the comptroller, any senator, any assemblyman. They have total ability to look at whatever they want to look at." However, when it was reported that he was interfering with the commission's investigation, he responded with, "The Moreland Commission was my commission. It's my commission. My subpoena power, my Moreland Commission. I can appoint it, I can disband it. I appoint you, I can unappoint you tomorrow. So interference, it's my commission. I can't interfere with it because it's mine. It is controlled by me." After the tragic mass murder in Sandy Hook, Connecticut, Governor Cuomo forced through a poorly written and confusing gun control law without allowing state legislators the constitutionally required 3 days of review. This, of course, was the notorious SAFE Act, or as its victims call it, the Unsafe Act. In one of his appearances in the run-up to passage of the law, the governor famously said, "No one needs 10 bullets to kill a deer." New York State DEC already covers that. What he might well have said was, "No woman needs 10 bullets to stop an attacker," because that was the result of this ill-conceived law. When there was public outcry against the proposed law, the governor responded by stating that people who didn't agree with him, generally conservatives, had no place in New York State. In 2015, during the uproar of the passage and implementation of the new Common Core educational standards at the height of the opt-out movement, Cuomo tried to minimize the growing backlash against these standards by pointing out that the test results wouldn't have any immediate impact on students, even though they would be used to evaluate teachers. "The grades are meaningless to the students," Cuomo said. "They can opt out if they want to, but on the other hand, if the child takes the test, it's practice and the score doesn't count." Times Union columnist Fred LeBrun replied with, "So remind us why they're taking these tests, if they aren't being used to steer and model learning and personal improvement." Ah, practice. So all the anxiety and tears by young learners, parental anguish, all for nothing but practice. I'm sure parents especially will be pleased to hear they've been played for suckers and their children used as pawns. Cuomo's various development programs have, at best, lost money. At worst, they've driven businesses and workers out of the state. One example is the so-called Buffalo Billions program, an attempt to get companies to invest in the western region of the state. As reported in local papers, most states offer tax breaks, low-interest loans, grants, and other subsidies to companies they hope to attract and retain. But Cuomo has moved beyond that to state ownership of the means of production. Where have I heard the term state ownership of the means of production before? The article went on to say, the original tenant of the Syracuse area light bulb plant walked away from the project, into which Cuomo has plowed still more state cash to attract a startup semiconductor manufacturer. The little-used film hub failed to produce any permanent jobs and was recently conveyed by the state for $1 to Onondaga County. To paraphrase the movie line, build it and they won't come. Several years ago, it was reported that New York State had purchased 11 acres of property in downtown Niagara Falls for the sum of $25.7 million taxpayer dollars, well above market value. In his time as governor, New York State has seen the greatest exodus of taxpayers and businesses ever, to the point New York dropped from the third most populous state to the fourth, with the attendant loss of representatives in the U.S. House. His numerous development programs have failed spectacularly, costing the remaining residents of New York untold billions of dollars. A few years back, Andrew was quoted as saying, "We're not going to make America great again. It was never that great," which is a far cry from his father Mario, who would frequently praise America as the greatest country on earth and say that he learned about America's greatness from his immigrant parents, Andrew's grandparents, as they built their lives together and raised their children in New York. Earlier this year, progressive Democrat Assembly member Ron Kim accused Cuomo of making threats over the phone following Kim's criticism of the nursing home scandal. There's a long pattern of similar behavior from Cuomo. This leads me to his COVID response, which, while much praised by the media and leading to an Emmy Award and a profitable book deal, involved shutting down New York as far as possible and crushing small businesses with mandate after mandate. One of the most infamous policies of this time involved requiring senior facilities to take in COVID-positive patients, introducing the virus to the most at-risk population and causing untold thousands of deaths. At this point, I'd like to shout out to Steve McLaughlin, the county executive of Rensselaer County, who refused Cuomo's order and did not allow COVID-positive patients back into the nursing homes. This resulted in Rensselaer County losing no seniors in that facility to COVID. Good job, Steve. Recently, the new governor, Kathy Hochul, reported that there were at least 12,000 more deaths than had been reported. Personally, I'd like to see a class action wrongful death lawsuit brought against the former governor as a private individual by the families of the seniors who died in nursing homes due to his policies. In early August of 2021, his top aide, Melissa DeRosa, resigned. She was directly involved in obscuring the number of deaths caused by this policy from the federal government. She also led efforts to retaliate against at least one of the women who claimed they'd been sexually harassed by the governor in December of 2020. This is not even close to being all I could say about Andrew Cuomo's lack of character or fitness for any political office. Let's just leave it with, I'm not a fan. Interestingly, some of my more liberal New York friends don't like Andrew Cuomo either and refer to him as Governor 1% in reference to his dealings with the corporate world. This brings us to the present and Andrew Cuomo's resignation announcement, in which he stated he would be leaving the office 14 days after his resignation. I understand some time is necessary for an orderly transition, but this sounded suspiciously like 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Even former Governor David Paterson, who took over for Eliot Spitzer, commented that 14 days was excessive and it shouldn't take more than 5. One of the remarks in Cuomo's resignation announcement was unintentionally amusing. He said he was resigning in part because an impeachment trial would be a waste of taxpayer money. There's no evidence he's ever cared anything more about taxpayer money than how much he could siphon off to his and his cronies' pockets. Following his announcement, Cuomo continued to issue edicts and executive orders right up to the end. When the time came for him to move out of the governor's mansion, it was reported Cuomo left his dog behind. Whatever the truth of this matter, sadly, it's a pattern seen all too often after the political usefulness of an animal has passed. Since his departure, more information has come out regarding his controlling behavior and intimidation and bullying tactics, such as his policy that all Freedom of Information Law requests had to be approved by the governor's office before being processed, a policy that pushed processing times from days or weeks to months. While I hope his departure heralds a better political climate for New York, I lived in that state too long to expect much positive change to come from this event. For example, as mentioned earlier, Cuomo's top aide was Melissa DeRosa, whose father is a partner at the top lobbying firm of Bolton St. John's. It's been reported that Kathy Hochul's top aide is Karen Persheli-Keough. Her husband is a partner at the top lobbying firm of Bolton St. John's. The more things change, the more they stay the same. To end on a slightly more positive note, the day after he finally left office, the International Academy of Television Arts and Sciences announced they were revoking Cuomo's Emmy Award and removing any reference to him in their official materials, and the publisher of his book stated they will not be printing any more editions of that book. Hopefully the publisher will follow up by getting back the $5 million advance Cuomo was paid. That would be a nice parting blow to the man who considers himself all but the king of New York. He wasn't even a duke, nor was he a number one.
All right, well, first I got to masturbate, then I got to go to bed.
Oh, dude. What have we become?
Please don't put me in the box again.
That about wraps up this segment. If you have any questions for me or suggestions for future segments or a comment on a past segment, please post them on the Assorted Calibers Podcast Facebook page, and Aaron or Weer'd will make sure I get them. I'm also a contributor on the Blue Collar Prepping blog, which can be found at bluecollarprepping.blogspot.com. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. I'm David, and this is Gun Lovers and Other Strangers.
All right, Weer'd. There you go. Is that sufficient?
Yes.
Are you happy now?
Oh
okay.
My God, like the sheer, like, this is the reason why I asked David to do this, is because, I mean, it's one of those, like, it's so much horribleness that he has done in his political career that, like, the news doesn't even touch half of it in talking about his resignation. And I mean, it boggles my mind. I mean, of course, it's the family dynasty explains a lot of it, but oh God, how can we get there?
Yeah, I know that this isn't really any sort of comfort for people who lost loved ones due to Cuomo's mandate of putting the COVID-infected in with the healthy elderly, but that is really what caused New York to lose its population and lose its one of its representatives in Congress. Because I don't have the actual numbers in front of me, I really should have, but it was like when you look at the number needed to lose a representative and then the number of old people who died in homes due to COVID, the number of COVID deaths is greater than that. And so at least you got him to lose his job.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't bring your family member back. It's really not meant to comfort, but maybe you got some degree of justice.
Yeah.
Because really, if I'm being really, really honest here, the entire reason why he's being kicked out of office, as far as I can see, and it isn't because of the sexual allegations, although that's the story they're running with. I maintain it's because he cost the party political power, and he needed to be punished. And so this was convenient.
Yeah. I would also like to say him going out on his ear might be a lesson to be learned for the next governor. But we heard David talking about Eliot Spitzer, and David did not specifically mention this, but I think it's very important to say, you know, I'm one of those people that thinks that, you know what, if one person is both two people are willing to have sex and both people are willing to exchange money in the case of it, what's it my business to say anything about it? But Eliot Spitzer very specifically went after people who were engaging in solicitation of sex workers, and he was engaged in sending out stings for johns and prostitutes. And so that the fact that he was then soliciting a prostitute on the side himself, it just shows a absolute level of hypocrisy that is really disgusting. And certainly Andrew Cuomo thought that he was above all of that. Aaron?
Yes?
Have you seen Xander?
Not in a long time.
I mean, there was supposed to be a segment. I'm looking here. I'm not seeing a segment. It was supposed to be here hours ago. Where is Xander?
Welcome to Xander's Independent Thoughts with yours truly, Xander Opal. I recently heard the phrase, if you don't have a destination, any road will get you there. Coincidentally, I also recently got lost driving a tractor. I was bringing it from a dealership where it was serviced to a farm quite a few miles away. I made a wrong turn in trying to avoid some road construction and wound up adding an hour to the drive. Top speed for me was 25 miles an hour. I had ridden as a passenger in a truck to the dealership, so my sense of how long it would take to get to the correct turn point was rather skewed. On top of that is the stress of trying to let the buildup of traffic behind me by on a regular interval, not running down mailboxes, road signs, and other crunchy things. My first mistake was not planning my route before I left the parking lot. I was eager to just jump in and go. I had access to a map and the phone on my hip. Yet, I didn't check it until I was quite lost and alarm bells were in the back of my head going, this ain't right. Bailout plans for prepping need to account for this sort of thing. If one lives in an area subject to fires, for example, you usually don't have time to check your route. You have to know ahead of time various paths to take depending on which ones can be taken. If you don't have a motor vehicle, then you really need to know ahead of time. One thing I didn't do was backtrack because of how expensive it would be time-wise. That was merely taking 4 times as long as what a car or truck would take. If I was on bicycle or foot, it would have taken 10 or more times as long as it would be to drive. I like to say that GPS will get you there, eventually. Settle your arguments with your digital navigator ahead of time, including learning to set waypoints. You know, I want to go this way because you never want to approach that intersection from that direction. Where possible, drive around a bit so you can recognize landmarks at key points. I managed to get to my destination an hour late, fortunately with some daylight left. In the grand scheme of things, it wasn't huge, an hour of my time, a few gallons of diesel. However, it did bring to mind what could have been. Just a few moments of preparation would have saved me so much frustration. Have fun, be safe, and I hope it gave you something to think about.
Aaron, do you ever think back, like when you're driving someplace unfamiliar and remembering back when we used to have to use like maps or written directions or stuff to get there?
Dude, I didn't have a smartphone until, when was it? 2015? Something like that. I mean, while y'all were using GPS, I was having to use either an atlas or a printout from MapQuest or Google Maps. So, yes, I do.
It's just, oh man, like I remember, like I used to go and get on fishing boats where it'd be like literally this old fisherman's house that was just on an intercoastal waterway somewhere, and the boat would like tie up to the dock behind his house, and I'm just trying to find this fisherman's house like in the middle of nowhere using just written directions that were given to me by my boss. And it's just it's so funny at how far we've come since then, where now it's just one of those, oh yeah, just look up. But at the same time, we must be very, very careful when using our GPS. It is always good to look at a map before you go anywhere, because GPS uses an algorithm. The computer that is calculating how you get from point A to point B doesn't live near you. And so therefore they may say, absolutely drive through the Big Dig in Boston at in rush hour traffic. This is a perfectly reasonable way to get there.
Well, honestly, driving through Boston during rush hour period is a bad idea.
Yeah. But there you can side skirt in certain things. Like the GPS always gets angry at me as I suddenly go, all right, traffic's starting to get thick here. Time to get up onto the surface roads. And then of course there's the joy of I was driving from I think it was Medford to New Bedford, Massachusetts. And you have to traverse the city of Boston to get there. Medford is north of Boston. New Bedford is really right next to Rhode Island. And it was like 2:00 in the morning because I had to get to the boat early, and I tried to go down underneath the city through the Big Dig, and they were doing maintenance on the tunnel, and whoever the genius was that put up the detour signs led in a circle.
Oh, jeez.
I followed the detour signs, and I got to the first detour sign. And I literally like did that. Like, of course it's 2:00 in the morning. I've just woken up after going to bed early to try to get as much sleep as I can. And so I'm just like, maybe I'm just still groggy and I screwed something up here. No, they're setting me in circles. And I literally did like orienteering is I looked up out the window of my truck and I saw the Prudential Center, and I knew that, okay, I know where the Prudential Center is in the city of Boston. I'm going to go up onto this surface road, and I'm going to keep the Prudential Center off on this side of me and going in this direction. And I know that eventually it will pop me out on the south side of Boston, and I will pop into Quincy, Mass, and I can pick back up on 93. And that was my plan, and I'll be damned, it worked.
That's less orienteering and just more dead reckoning.
Yeah, it was just dead reckoning, but also at the same time, you've got the little. I forgot to look this up. Aaron, do you know off the top of your head if do the tree rings form on a tree stump towards the north? That was one.
You are mixing not even a metaphor. Tree rings are internal.
Yes.
What you were asking about when it comes to the north is, does moss grow on the north side of a tree?
So I'm not, but that is absolutely a thing. And let's see.
I mean, it's sort of, but not really. Based on my experience, with the various orienteering classes I've taken, I mean, yeah, the northerly side of trees gets less sunlight than the southern side of trees because we're in the northern hemisphere, but it's such a minuscule amount that unless you are like way far north, you're not going to be able to really make a difference. I mean, if moss is growing on a tree, it's just as likely to be growing on the east or west or south. I still don't know how you somehow... Do tree rings radiate out from the center? What does that have to do with north?
But they are eccentric. So the right here, using tree stumps to determine north-south direction, felled trees can be used as directional indicators. In the northern hemisphere, the growth rings on a tree tend to be more widely spaced on the southern side of the tree, the side that gains more sunlight. It works vice versa in the southern hemisphere, where the wider rings are in the northern side of the tree. So literally, if you look at a tree that has fallen down or has been cut down, the very, very core, the bullseye of the tree ring will be off to one side of the tree, and if you're in the northern hemisphere, that will be towards the north side.
I have literally never heard of this in my life.
Okay, well, now you have. And I was also saying, like, if for the moss on the side of the tree, it is always on the shadier side. But if you have a tree that is, say, growing on a hillside that faces south, the moss will be on the southern side, because that will be shadier than the actual northern side.
Mm-hmm.
So you just there is the moss will grow on the northern side of the tree in the northern hemisphere, unless exceptions met. But the tree will almost always have the rings will point towards north.
Okay. What does this have to do with the price of tea in China?
I was just talking about it's an interesting orienteering. If you happen to be walking through the woods, or you're hiking and you get lost, and you know which cardinal direction will take you to safety, that and the location of the sun and things like that is a good way to figure out which way you're walking.
Or you could be a tool-using mammal and have a compass.
That's true. Or a smartphone and fire up that old GPS, though that won't work necessarily well without cell signal, because unless you have the maps downloaded. But yes, it's like the people that always talk about, like, I've got my fire starter going and all that. Why don't you just have a lighter or some matches?
Well, yeah. Creek Stewart, who is a survival instructor that I really respect, he has just a massive raging hard-on for starting fires with friction, and masturbation joke not intended, but you can work your way from there. And he's all about the bow drill, the fire plow, this, that, and he loves doing it. But he says, I always carry a lighter with me, because when it comes to, it's good to have the knowledge and be able to do these things, and I do it in order to practice. But if I'm in a survival situation, I don't want to waste a lot of time and energy if I don't have to. So yeah, I always carry a lighter with me and make sure it works.
Yep, that's one of those, lighters are small, lighters are eeasy. Those weatherproof, windproof, varnished matches. Oh God, those things are awesome. And just get a little film canister bottle and fill them up with matches and a little piece of striking paper, and away you go. So
striking. Oh, yeah. Is that like
the sandpaper? Yeah,
the sand. Okay. I'd never heard it called that before.
I wanted to say sandpaper, but I'm like, but that seems like it's not for sanding wood; it's for striking the match. Striking paper. I don't know. Is that the right term? Striking surface.
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, at least now I don't feel quite as dumb for taking a while to figure out what you were saying. It was a weirdism. I understand.
It was a weirdism.
So yeah, having these skills is good, but really what I recommend most is to have a little dashboard mounted compass, the one that sort of looks like an eyeball. Mm-hmm. You can mount to your dashboard, and have an up-to-date road atlas by like Rand McNally. With those two things, I'm not going to say you're never going to get lost, but it will be much harder to get lost as long as you know where north is and you can find where you are on a map.
Unless you're in Rhode Island, because Rhode Island is filled with wormholes. I have no idea what it is, but when I was navigating by paper map, I crossed I was on a road and I crossed another road. I said, okay, I'm at this intersection. And then I kept driving, and then I crossed that road again, and it didn't loop around. So I clearly have broken the space-time continuum. It's a small state. It takes years to drive across it.
Was the road called Peachtree?
No, that's that's Georgia. That's Atlanta.
Well, I mean, the obvious inherent joke would be that, the various peach trees in Georgia sort of converge and warp space-time due to their density, and so you've got a peach tree that somehow manages to be up in Rhode Island.
Ooh, I I'm too terrified to go there. That's a lot of Lovecraft stuff happens there, so I'm staying away. You can't make me.
Speaking of being too terrified to go there, thanks to each and every one of our listeners, and a very special thanks to all our supporters on Patreon. Weer'd, tell us how to become a Patreon patron.
You can become a Patreon patron. Yeah, I'm good at this. You surprised me, Aaron. That's what I'm going to say. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. Go to patreon.com/Assorted Calibers Podcast to sign up. Patrons get an early release of the podcast. Plus, they can get bonus content, like the hilarious blooper reels where it's all the outtakes, including stuff like me screwing up the talking about the patrons. The ACP film track where we sit down and watch movies and give our commentary on them. And the ACP Mag Dump, which is our unscripted bonus episode.
Also, please remember to rate us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe to us on the platform of your choice, and share the show with your friends both online and off.
I've got a blog. It's weirdworld.com, and I'm also on Handgun Radio with Ryan the Chad.
He's got a blog. I've got multiple blogs, but who's counting? I've also got a couple charities. You may have heard of them. No big deal.
I got my Pink Pistols pins the other day. Oh my God, they're lovely.
Awesome. Now you need to order an Operation Blazing Sword pin.
I do.
Which is available for $15 for one or $25 for two.
Shut up and take my money. And thanks to Nate Spencer for our music. It's going to turn into a genius, Aaron. I understand you're frustrated, but watch this happen. I'm like Nostradamus predicting genius.
So I'm having trouble thinking of what to say, and Weer'd has just told me it's going to be genius, and I'm going to prove him wrong. It's going to fall completely flat. And so's our podcast. Good night, everybody.
Good night. It wasn't good, but it made me laugh.